Hi, Dr. Yass here. I think for most people who are suffering with chronic pain, it is time to come to the realization that the cause of your symptoms is not a medical issue, it's actually a fitness issue. For 30 plus years, you have been programmed to believe that the cause of your symptoms are structural in nature, such as herniated disc, stenosis, arthritis, meniscal tears, compression fractures, all of these types of structural variations that show up on MRIs, and therefore the treatment necessary to resolve your symptoms comes within the medical system. And there are a variety of specialties that you can seek care from, whether it's the orthopedic surgeon, the neurologist, the rheumatologist, the more benign types of treatments, chiropractic, physical therapy. Ultimately, the essence of what you have been programmed to believe, and quite frankly, the medical practitioners themselves have been programmed to believe, is that the cause of the symptoms is within the medical system, structural, requiring medical intervention. Let's look at where that's gotten us over the last 30 years. You have 130 million Americans, roughly 1 billion people worldwide suffering from chronic pain. If the essence of how to address chronic pain were correctly being provided, then we would be seeing this number going down, in fact, plummeting in its value. But in fact, it simply continues to rise. That has to be a red flag as to the fact that the existing system is invalid, in fact, baseless. We could look at the fact that 22 million Americans are addicted to prescription pain medication. We could look at the facts of the failure rates of spine surgeries at 70 to 80%, the use of the term failed back surgery syndrome to identify that the symptoms experienced prior to the surgery are the same as after. We could look at the constant revisions being performed of joint replacements such as hip, knee, and shoulder. You seem to get the sense that regardless of who you go to, regardless of the specialty, you don't seem to get any results. And in fact, chronic pain can be defined as misdiagnosed acute pain. The wrong tissue initially is identified as the tissue in distress eliciting the symptom, and therefore all subsequent treatments to this invalid tissue leads to no change in the symptoms being experienced. That alone should tell you clearly that the wrong tissue is being addressed. We can look at the types of things people are being told, that the threatening type of promotion for surgery. Oh, if you don't get that surgery in the next 7 days, you could be paralyzed. That's just simple insanity. The only way to become paralyzed is from some massive traumatic event. Not getting a surgery will never lead to paralysis. That's just insanity. It's an attempt to instill fear. Everybody who goes for surgery are told the same types of things. What's the chances this is going to make me better? Well, it's 30% chance it'll get better, 30% chance it will get worse, 30% chance it won't change. Or, oh, it's a 50-50 shot. You have those. I love this one. When you're getting surgery at a peripheral joint, you could expect to not get full range of motion after the surgery. But isn't that why I am getting the surgery? Oh, you'll never be able to play tennis, golf, work, do this or that again. But isn't that why you're getting the surgery? if you spend enough time involved in this, and unfortunately for many of you, you have invested massive amounts of time, effort, and money, and yet you're still in the same boat, it becomes quite evident that the problem isn't yours in your inability to resolve your symptoms. The problem is systemic. It is the system itself. I am contacted from people worldwide. I don't care if you're contacting me from England, Australia, India. It doesn't matter. All of your statements are the same. You've sought medical treatment due to a symptom. You've had an MRI. It's identified a structural variation. You've been treated for that structural variation. You're still having the same symptoms. It is evident that the existing model is flawed and baseless because of the fact that the core mechanism for identifying the cause is the use of the MRI. It's baseless. There is no credible evidence that those structural variations are doing anything, in fact, let alone creating the symptoms you're experiencing. There's so much theoretical indicators that the existing use of the MRI is baseless. You could look at the fact that if they're saying that your pain began 2 weeks ago and that a herniated disc or stenosis is the cause of that symptom, that is to imply that 2 weeks ago is when the herniated disc or stenosis began. We're trying to correlate a cause, which is something that created the symptom, so the inception of the cause must occur at the inception of the symptom. So they're trying to tell you that 3 weeks ago, if you had taken an MRI, that herniated disc or stenosis wasn't there. That's just nonsense. These are degenerative processes that take years, if not decades, to develop. If you had taken an MRI a year before your symptoms began, you would have found the exact same structural variation. The scam of the system is that that MRI is always taken at the time that you're having your symptom. And as a result, since it's the first time you've heard these phrases, it is easy for them to assert that since the structural variation is found at the time the symptom is experiencing, then it must be causing the symptom. It's simply baseless. The MRI, if taken a year or 2 years prior, would have found the same thing. And if you knew that this structural variation occurred years before this symptom began, nobody could assert it's the cause of the symptom. We could also look at the idea of, well, if these do cause symptoms, then those who do not have symptoms should not have structural variations. But that's already been disproved. We can see a study that said over the age of 60, 90% of people who have no back pain, 90% have bulging or degenerative discs. There was the study that showed of people with knee pain, 63% had meniscal tears, while 60% of people who did not have pain had meniscal tears. There's just simply no correlation. Then the most serious and most damaging indicator is the fact that when they identify a structural variation, the actual symptom being experienced could never even be created. Could never be created by that structural deficit. Whether it's the location is wrong, what brings on the symptom, it's just impossible for that structural variation to create the symptom you're being experienced. Now, the way the system works is they show you a fancy picture. You've got this person who's educated and trained in the medical system telling you something, and they passionately believe what they're saying is true. So clearly, it's very hard for you to step away from this or assume that what's happening is invalid. Of course, that makes sense. But evidence will always tell the tale. It will always tell whether something is valid or not. And the evidence is abysmal. It reinforces, whether it's from a scientific study-based concept, a clinical presentation, how people are responding after these treatments, or a theoretical basis? Whether these treatments and this mechanism for diagnosing even has any theoretical basis. If you look at all of these, you would see none, zero, baseless. That's why you're not getting better. You must recognize that in almost all cases, certainly 95 to 98% of cases, the cause is the inability of the muscles that you try to use in performing your functional activities are simply not strong enough. You live in a gravity environment, which means that there is a force being applied to you every time you try to do something. If the force output of the muscles trying to perform the activity are not strong enough, they'll strain and elicit symptoms, or they'll cause another muscle to compensate, break down, and elicit symptoms. Or they could cause a misalignment of the joint surfaces that those muscles attach to, leading to joint pain. Or the muscle itself can refer symptoms, such as tingling or altered sensation at the hand from a strained rotator cuff muscle. Or they can strain and impinge on a nerve. And the nerve refers symptoms, such as with sciatica. Sciatica has nothing to do with the lumbar spine. Another massive fallacy. So what you'll come to recognize, and what you need to recognize, is the fact that in almost all cases, 95 to 98% of cases, the issue isn't one of a medical deficit. It's actually a fitness deficit. You simply don't have enough strength in all the particular muscles necessary to perform your functional tasks. The force output of the muscles is less than the force requirement of your activities, and the muscles are straining. Whether it's that they're eliciting pain, referring pain to another muscle, causing misalignment of joint surfaces, referring a symptom to another location, or impinging on a nerve, which then refers a symptom, it doesn't matter. The cause is one of a fitness issue. A fitness issue cannot be addressed in the medical system. Muscle, which is the primary tissue responsible for all of your symptoms, is the invisible tissue to the medical system. Muscular deficits, all the ones I just mentioned, would never show up on a diagnostic test. There is no medical specialty that is educated or trained to identify them. That's why you can go to all these people. It doesn't matter who you go to. It doesn't matter how many specialists you go to. You still end up in the same situation because you're not going to someone who recognizes the cause of your symptoms as being a fitness-based issue. You must appreciate that the Yass method recognizes this, is outside the medical system, recognizes your problem as a fitness deficit. And the great part is, even in the 3 to 5% of cases where it is structural, the Yass method's ability to interpret the body's presentation of symptoms will allow those people to be identified, and you could be sent back into the medical system to have the medical treatment you need. The other 95 to 98% of cases, you could stay in the medical system all you want. You will never get better. You need the Yass method. It is the only method that interprets the presentation of your symptoms as the way of identifying what tissue is in distress. That's what's going on. That tissue is actually eliciting the symptoms you're experiencing because it's in distress, and it requires an intervention to resolve the distress of that tissue. If it's muscle, only targeted progressive resistance exercise can be utilized. Cause the appropriate muscles to adapt to the appropriate progressive resistance. It will get stronger to where it can perform your functional tasks without eliciting symptoms. So you must recognize that the cause of your symptoms is not medical. It's actually fitness-based. And within the fitness realm, only the Yass method can identify which particular muscles is creating the symptom and how to isolate those muscles with progressive resistance to get them strong enough to where they can perform your functional tasks without eliciting symptoms. If you want more information about the Yass method, you go to my website, www.mitchellyass.com. Contact me directly, Dr. Mitch, DRMITCH, at MITCHELLYASS.com. See my YouTube page, Dr. Mitchell Yass, my Facebook page, Dr. Mitchell Yass. Get the information about the Yass method so you can have your pain resolved. For now, this is Dr. Mitchell Yass wishing you a pain-free, fully functional life. Bye-bye.